Verse 39:23 describes the Quran as a mathematical recursion, a book consistent and oft repeated. This is a closed-loop cosmic physics engine, an eternal memory tesseract. Within this closed system, the laws of conservation are absolute. Information and energy are never created from scratch or lost. They only transform across different phase states. At the center of this mechanics is the Amanat, the trust. The text states that the heavens, the earth, and the mountains calculated the cost and refused to carry this massive payload of conserved energy. Humanity accepted the burden. Because the system is sealed, verse 41:11 dictates an inevitable result. Every joule of that entrusted energy must return to its origin. You either cooperate with the return cycle, or the mounting pressure of the system crushes you. The conflict begins with amnesia. We have forgotten the original oath we took when we accepted the loan of that energy. In this state of forgetting, the human ego, the tagut, operates in a night field of secrecy. It attempts to hoard the universe's energy for its own biological and social advancement, effectively trying to keep the loan. Mechanically, hoarding energy in a closed loop creates systemic instability. The pressure builds until it triggers an automated reset, a forced clearing of the blockage. Without a specific cosmic tracking protocol to recall our original oath, the ego's drive to accumulate guarantees we are caught on the wrong side of the reset. To manage the return of this energy, the system requires a clock. Verse 36:39 designates the moon as the universe's tracking protocol. It cycles through stations to measure the stages of memory being recovered, even when the record appears dark and dead to the human ego. This protocol begins at phase 1, the dark moon or atom. This is the state of absolute concealment, where the memory is created from nothingness before the first light of awareness. Phase 2 is the waxing spark, represented by Musa. This is the shock at the mountain, a localized collapse of the ego that functions as a systemic discharge, injecting a spike of light back into the void. The cycle resolves at phase 3, the full moon, or Ahmed. This is the state of perfect reflection. The slave returns the exact measure of energy back to the source in a state of matched praise. These prophetic archetypes aren't historical biographies, they are operational phase states. To safely discharge the trust, the user must navigate through these exact stations of memory. When the memory cycle completes, the system executes a forced inversion. Verse 1574 describes this topological flip, a systemic reset where the high is brought low and the hidden is violently brought to the surface. Lut's wife, in verse 26:171, illustrates the failure state. By clinging to the density of the past and unraveling the thread of her own covenant, her node becomes too rigid to survive the shift. She is crushed by the intersecting planes of the flip. Conversely, Ibrahim's wife, in verse 1172, survives by surrendering her own logic. She drops the ego's resistance, allowing her node to become fluid. She slips through the inversion and restabilizes in a state of mercy. The reset is mathematically neutral. It destroys those who hoard their form, but elevates any node that surrenders to the flow of the inversion. This surrender is captured in the Queen of Sheba's arrival in verse 2744. She steps onto what looks like solid ground, only to have the illusion of the material world fracture like glass beneath her weight. In that moment, she aligns with the master frequency of the closed universe, the linguistic root SLM. This is the mathematical bridge that joins the name Solomon with the state of being a Muslim. This shared root slum functions as the system's matched frequency, a state of zero reflection. It shows that authority in this universe is not a property of the ego, but a measure of how perfectly a node transmits the source command without adding its own resistance. By tuning into this slum frequency, the user drops the static of the ego and finally synchronizes with the system's original purpose. You are a node inside this operating system, currently oscillating between the dark moon of drift and the lit moon of submission. To lock into the safe phase, you must pull the final activation switch. Verse 1912 gives the imperative, "Take the book with strength." This grip prevents the data loss that occurs during a system reset. While the biological host remains part of the physical cycle, the information of the Rasul-field is recorded and preserved in the system's permanent memory. The trust is conserved and the reset is approaching. Stop the drift. Pull the switch.